Hi, everyone. Look at us. We have a wonderful group here today. And I decided with the sun shining, it was going to be spring day. So I put my spring Calgary shirt on just because it's that time of the year. I started thinking happy spring. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Sergeant Cheryl Callahan from the Pittsfield Police Department and Officer Elizabeth Zip from the Hinsdale Police Department. They're going to be speaking about the Violent Crime Task Force that was just started. So welcome to the two of them, if you would please, and come on up. I was going to say right This is Officer Zip and Sergeant Callahan. This is our triad group. We're ready and waiting and listening to all of what you have to say. Would you like some chairs to be just good? Okay.
Thanks for having us. We came out to answer any questions that anyone might have about what the task force is, what we do. We're comprised of officers from several different communities, and we work with the state police detectives in conjunction to investigate certain types of crimes in Berkshire County, like domestic violence, human trafficking, things like that. Does anybody have any questions on what human trafficking is or what kind of domestic violence crimes that we would investigate are?
I think probably a lot of people don't know just whether there is a lot of it here in Berkshire County. Clue us in on some minor details.
So there certainly is a lot of human trafficking in Berkshire County. We might not think there is, but human trafficking has a lot of roots, whether it could come from domestic violence, substance abuse, anything like that. There's definitely been a lot of cases brought to our attention that have an underlying cause of human trafficking in them.
Yeah, so human trafficking, folks, is not what we're seeing on television. It's not, a truck full of people who are being held against their will. Not to say that that can't happen in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, but what we're seeing locally, it does not look like that, okay? We're talking about people who are being kind of tricked into doing activities, whether it be a sexual activity, and it can also be just for work labor. And then those people are being withheld money. They could be, if they're from another country or they need identification or they have a passport, then those items are being withheld from them to make them pay off what their traffickers call a debt. And so if they're doing some form of work or a servitude or a service for that person, but they're not getting paid for it, or if they get tricked into doing those things, that is trafficking. Oftentimes we're seeing people who, as Officer Zip said, do have some underlying mental health issues, maybe some substance abuse issues, and so it makes them an easier target, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it is still here in Berkshire County. It's probably just, a lot of people just don't know what to look for. Yes.
So are you saying it's mostly from people from out of the country, or it's people that are citizens in the United States?
No, I'm not saying it's from people outside this country. It is definitely in this county.
So citizens
the United States, our
okay.
citizens,
Right.
your neighbors, your people that you probably pass sometimes on the street.
Okay.
Yeah, it is here. Does anybody have any questions regarding the task force itself?
How big a problem is the human trafficking?
That is to be determined. I mean, it's a problem for sure. We're learning about more and more victims of this every single day. And it knows no race, no age, no financial means or anything like that. It is, as I said, people can be tricked into it unbeknownst to them. It could be something that they think that they're doing voluntarily, and then they realize that they're stuck and they can't get out. So it's it's pretty prevalent in Berkshire County, for sure.
So you're going to be covering all of Berkshire County then? Do you have, links with the different police departments?
Yeah, so by virtue of a task force, what that means is it's a multidisciplinary, multi-agency group that we all work together. So Officer Ship is from Hinsdale, I am in Pittsfield, we have a Lee officer and 2 North Adams officers. We work under the kind of umbrella of the District Attorney's Office and the State Police. And by virtue of that, that gives us the authority to work in other areas of Berkshire County and help them conduct investigations. If something gets flagged from the District Attorney's Office, they get reports, their members of their department flag it for certain things. There are just certain criteria that they look for, and then they will send it up to us to take a closer look. Sometimes it comes in, somebody tells us that. It may come in as a domestic, it may come in as a sexual assault, and by talking to them and investigating it, we're learning more and more information, and then we learn that they are being trafficked. And so we get, fortunately, a lot of assistance from the state police and the district attorney's office, and we all work together to investigate these things.
It's very beneficial for communities like Hinsdale, where we don't normally have a lot of resources on our day-to-day patrol to investigate these large crimes that certainly happen in Hinsdale. So when something happens in a very small town, we can work with the task force in investigating it for the victim, especially if there's other jurisdictions involved. You know, if the incident happened in Hinsdale, the person's from Pittsfield. That way we can work with all the agencies to investigate what's happened.
Possibly you can name some of the other agencies that are involved?
So the State Police Detective Unit, that's assigned to the District Attorney's Office. We work with the District Attorney's Office. Also, we work with helping get resources for the victims through agencies like the Elizabeth Freeman Center, substance abuse through, or mental health through the Green Center. We work with them.
Might be the kids' place as well,
Yeah.
depending on the age of the victim. And also, right now, currently, there's 2 North Adams officers that work with us, Officer Klein and Officer Clement, and 1 Lee officer, Lou. And Olivia Cox from Berkshire.
So is human trafficking your primary focus, or are there other areas that you're also focusing on?
We are also focusing on domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Sometimes they all kind of come together. You know, we learn about sex trafficking or human trafficking based on the original report. But we, you know, the district attorney, her passion, and she is definitely about the domestic violence and the sexual assault, and she is putting all of her power behind it, and that's why we're here today.
So you're saying this is all connected?
Yes, yeah, it certainly can be. It certainly can be.
Thinking of that little girl that was just found over in Schenectady area at Albany.
Yeah.
Would that play into it too? If there happened to be a child, no, that one was within a family, I understand. But if a child was, you know, being in a little health, would that play into anything for you guys?
You know, I don't know enough about their case particularly. I saw briefly that he was found, and I think that's
But in general?
in general. It's hard to say, just in general terms. You know, we never know what we're going to. We think we have one thing. You know, Officer Zip and I were investigating something, and we thought it was one thing, and within a 2-minute conversation with the victim, it went this way real quick. And so we just really never know what we have. You know. And everybody in law enforcement is kind of like that. You think you're going to a B&E, and then you find out that it's not a B&E, something else. And so that's, you know, what we're kind of working with right now, is just kind of getting everything up and running and doing the best that we can do to just keep moving forward and to help the victim and to, you know, conduct good investigations.
How about the homeless? There are a lot of people that have trouble with the homeless,
What do you mean?
the people on the streets.
Well,
People take
the
advantage
homeless
of
in
them?
general, are they targets, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
they certainly can be. They certainly can be.
There's a lot of them in
Younger
Berkshire,
girls, they can be. Just being homeless, you know, that's a factor. It can be a factor for them because, you know, a younger person, a teenager, a young girl, or even a young boy, if they're cold and they're gonna go stay at somebody's house and somebody offers them their couch, they think that, okay, good, I have a nice safe place to stay. But unbeknownst to them, that person who's pretending to be their friend is really trying to do other things, whether they're trying to manipulate them to do things for them, or they can then make some money off of them. You know, there's a lot of variables and factors. So yes, the homeless can be at-risk population, but not all homeless people are trafficked.
Do you have anybody on board that deals with mental health issues or the MR population, the developmentally disabled people?
So we work with a lot of different agencies, and we will call them as needed. So for instance,
Or if they call
Officer
you.
Zip and I were working an investigation, and while speaking to this young woman, she made some statements, and I made a call to one of our co-responders. She works through the Berkshire Center, so it's great to have agencies involved where you can collaborate with treatment. There may not be something that I can do for her regarding her mental health or her treatment or her substance abuse, but I certainly can collaborate with another colleague from another department or agency, get her or him the help that they need in that moment, because our stuff's taking a while. It takes quite a bit of time to do our investigation, but in the meantime, they still need some help. They still need some counseling. They still need an advocate. They need a voice. There's a lot of things that they may need. And so we do have people that we can call upon when we come across something that...
So your task force is basically to search out and find information about what has happened.
Well, we're an investigative team.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all members of law enforcement, and that is what we're doing. We're all doing investigations that are brought to this task force through the district attorney's office. And likely those cases have come in from other police departments who did maybe an initial investigation, and then that gets forwarded for maybe one particular charge, and then they see something else because they see a different department may send another report, and some of the names may flag, may be familiar, they may kind of overlap a little bit, and then they send it to us and say, tell me what you can come up with this, and see if there's something there.
And as far as working with other agencies like the Berkshire Center or Elizabeth Freeman, all law enforcement officers have the ability to do that. So all jurisdictions, if they have a domestic violence issue, they can assist the victim into getting services from Elizabeth Freeman. Or if there's mental health, they can call the co-responder or they can call the Berkshire Center. So all law enforcement officers have that ability to work with other agencies. It's not just the task force that does that. Any other questions? Really?
Do you find that the different crimes, the sexual assault, trafficking, the domestics, do they fall individually into different age groups? Do you find more assaults, for example, in a certain age group as opposed to trafficking? No,
No.
all across the spectrum.
Yep.
And it can be male, female, but anyone can be a victim of any of those crimes. Unfortunately.
I wanted to ask about your training. Did you have special training about your police?
So all police officers go through, an academy training.
Right.
And then you get a little bit of kind of your basic introductory training. Through my time at Pittsfield, I've always been their domestic violence officer, at least for the last 14 or so years. And so I've attended many advanced trainings for sexual assault, domestic violence, trauma-informed investigations, and yes, human trafficking. Human trafficking, though, from the first human trafficking training that I attended 14, 15 years ago to what I've attended in the last couple of years, completely different. Completely different. Because we're learning more and we're seeing more and more ways that this is happening. And so, like I say, what we see on television, that's not what we're seeing here necessarily. We're not seeing, Hollywood makes it look one way. It makes it look like there is a, box truck full of women and they're getting dropped off and then they're getting picked up and then they're getting locked in cages. And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, because that can happen. What we're seeing is not that. So it's definitely different.
You said some people are getting paid or not getting paid,
Correct.
depending on whoever they're working for. Is this like a pimp?
Yeah.
Okay.
It can be, for a lack of a better term. They may not realize it at the time.
Term?
Right, but they're never really getting paid, because they're never really working their debt off, because that pimp or that person is saying, oh, well, you owe me for this, or you owe me for that.
Right.
And so then they never really get paid, because, oh, I let you sleep on my couch, I gave you drugs today, I bought you food, I let you use my shower. Common human decency type things, but it doesn't count in that world, because that's what they're, banking on is them to be indebted to them, and then they do prey on the weaker people that think that nobody's going to believe them. Most people think a prostitute can't be raped, but they can. Prostitutes have the right to say no. There are plenty of people in Berkshire County that make money selling themselves. At the end of the day, they don't have the right to be raped. They have the right to say no. And we're not necessarily saying that, we want to help those people. We want to have a voice for them, but they don't think they're believed. And so they don't come forward. And then they become vulnerable because now, they're suffering, they've been through some trauma, and they don't think anybody's going to believe them.
A lot of them don't know that they're being trafficked either. I mean, I've asked the victim, define human trafficking, to tell me what it is, and the person does not know. They see what you see on TV, and they're like, well, that's not happening to me, so I'm not being trafficked. But in reality, they are.
Is the percentages more women than men?
As far as being victims.
I don't know what the percentages are across the nation per se. I would say that we see more women because I think males don't tend to come forward as much. I wouldn't say that they're not victimized as much.
You saw another hand up there.
First, I want to say thank you so much for coming and sharing this information with us. Is community awareness, increasing people's understanding of what the problem is that part of what your job is? And are there other ways you're trying to get the word out?
Yes, so the district attorney has a domestic violence task force as well. And so task force, the term task force kind of gets thrown around a little bit, but on her domestic violence task force, she has, again, just people from multiple agencies across Berkshire County, and their main goal is just to work together to understand my job versus how they do something, how I can assist them, how they can assist me, and how can we get this word out to the general public so that we can educate the general public. We can educate maybe somebody who is being victimized. And I'm not sure if you were familiar with the One Book, One Read that we did last year. And so we do, there usually is something in that Berkshire Eagle, to my knowledge. The district attorney usually does some sort of community-based reading project. They send people out to just discuss domestic violence, for example. They'll talk about what it looks like. They'll talk about why people can't leave. Sometimes people say, I just don't understand why doesn't she just leave? Well, it's not that easy. It's not that easy for somebody to just pack up and leave. They may have children, or they may not have a job, or they may have a disability, or he's controlling her finances. Again, he took her ID, she can't go get her own job. There's always a factor that is built into that. And so they do a really good job at going out to the community and explaining what domestic violence is and what the cycle of the abuse is and why that happens. Same with sexual assault. There's, I think, it's April Child Abuse Month, Anna, and then Domestic Violence Month is in October. There's usually something around those months that the district attorney will advertise. And there is a new book coming out. They do a different author for each presentation. And I don't remember what that is right now, but I can get that to Elizabeth and let you all know about it. But it is a really good way to just get the word out. And talk to these people who are working within these agencies. There are people from Williams College, there are people from the Elizabeth Freeman Center, from Green Center, there are people from the Immigrant Center. And every race, color, religion, they all suffer in their own ways because each person who's experiencing it, it can be different in different cultures. And so there are some cultures that don't talk to police officers. They just absolutely won't talk to police officers because in their experience, maybe back in a different country, they're corrupt. And so they're never going to help them. And so, if they're here and something's happening to them, they still have that ingrained culture built into them, and they think that that's okay to be treated like that. We really do work with those agencies to try to get that word out.
Do you take that information into the school?
That's where I was going next.
Yeah.
Our minds work the same,
Yeah,
so.
they do.
There is people from the school departments on this task force as well. Not our side of it, the investigative side, on the violence crime side, but on the district attorney's domestic violence task force, there's a community-based part of the task force that does have people from the school departments all across Berkshire County. The school superintendent in North County, South County, the school teachers, the school adjustment counselors. So it is slowly working its way in there. Not every single school has it just yet, but it is something that has been discussed. And the Elizabeth Freeman Center does do things for juveniles as well, because that is their, that's their focus. It's just getting the word out and to get some understanding. Because, if you can't teach a young juvenile what a healthy relationship is, and they grow up thinking that this is okay, or they've grown up watching their mother get beat their whole life, or he grew up watching his father beat his mother. There is a lot of trauma that can happen from that, and so there are other agencies that try to reach out and kind of get it early as they can.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you're saying sexual assault, rape, abuse of children the same way this falls under this category also?
I didn't hear you.
Does that fall under the same category as your task force?
Sexual assault.
Rape, children, not just adults, children too?
I would say it falls under a different category per se. If each individual department, for example, if something comes into the police department and it's a sexual assault, if it's a child under 18, then that gets sent to what's called a SANE interview, a SANE interview, a forensic interview. Child sexual assault investigations are done differently to minimize the trauma to a child. So they incorporate a forensic interviewer who speaks to the child. They do one interview with that child, and then a bunch of different people are sitting around behind, either on a Zoom or behind a two-way glass so you can see and hear it, but that child is only speaking to one person. And so if it's a minor, it's done slightly different than if it's an adult. For that reason, we don't want to traumatize the child. We only want to interview them once. I'm sure you've heard, you don't want to ask a victim of sexual assault to tell their story over and over and over and over and over again. And it is unfortunate that sometimes they do have to tell their story over and over and over again. But with juveniles, we really want to minimize that and just do it the one time and that's it. And so there's somebody from the district attorney's office there's a forensic interviewer, there is the detective who might be doing the case, there might be a SANE nurse there. There's a group of people that do those.
that an acronym stand?
Yes, yes.
What does it stand for?
Sexual assault investigation. And so SANE, what they do at the kids' place is also different from, so a child might have to go, or a victim might have to go to the hospital, and we get what's called sexual assault examination done if they want to have that done. But it's kind of all part of the evidence collection and processing and investigation. So it might be kind of getting into a little bit too much, but there is a lot that goes to it. But back to your question, juveniles, child under 18, that is done completely different. Not the investigation so much, isn't done much different, but the way that we talk to them is done differently.
So if someone had a thought that they knew of someone who might have been violently assaulted or whatever, a direct call into the police station or to Hinsdale Police Station or Dalton officers, and direct call to pass it
If you
on.
think that a crime occurred or someone's in danger or something, contact your local police immediately.
Everybody hear that? Your local police department, which we have awesome police departments around here. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zip, thank you very much. We meet the third Wednesday of every month here at 1 o'clock. Always welcome to come if you have more information or have questions for us or whatever. Please feel free to come.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll close out the portion of our speakers and get into our regular meeting.